Hello and welcome to episode 45 of Reconstructing Cave Story. In this episode, we're going to be facing the problem of creating the particle effect that occurs when a projectile collides with a wall. And this particle effect is in our caret.bitmap file again, and it's just this kind of 45-degree rotated square that it kind of explodes, I guess, outwards. So this also is going to fall into the category of non-moving single animation loop projectile because our projectile star particle doesn't move and is just a single loop animation. And this now doesn't move and is just a single loop animation. So we're going to create a new immobile single loop particle, and we'll just extract all the information from our projectile star particle and have projectile star particle derived from this just so we can avoid writing the same code over and over again. And then we'll create our projectile wall particle, and here are the constants for that. It's just that tile x equals 11, tile y equals 0, width is 1 tile, and height is 1 tile. And then I experimented and I got like frames per second is about 20. And there's 4 frames, of course, in our particle effect. So yeah, let's get started. So I'm going to start, of course, with the immobile single loop particle, and we'll add a new item for a header file and a CC file. So immobile single loop particle .h. And we'll add one for .cc too. What? How do you spell immobile? Yeah. Kind of a long name, but whatever. It's going to derive from particle. And in fact, I'm going to open up our other particle effect, the projectile star particle, and basically take a lot of this from here. Let's look in here. We're going to take in all of the parameters necessary for an animated sprite instead of just a graphics, so that we can call it with an arbitrary animated sprite. But as far as the rest of this is concerned, I'm going to grab particle h and animated sprite.h, update and draw. I'll throw in a virtual destructor. And this is not going to be pure because I want to be able to instantiate these in case I need to. I don't think I will, but usually I'll just specialize it. And then it's going to have a private x and y and sprite. So now let's work out the constructor. It's going to take in a graphics and then all the stuff needed for an animated sprite. So let's see what that is. I think I call it in the CC file. So it needs a graphics, a sprite name. So const standard string sprite name. Source X, we could do this in, yeah, I'll do it in pixel. So units of pixel for source X. And same thing for source Y. Width. and height. What else? Frames per second and num frames. And this is just all the stuff needed to construct a animated sprite. So let's see, units, FPS, FPS, and units of frame, num frames. So let's go ahead and implement this in our Immobile Single Loop Particle CC. It's going to be very similar to our projectile star particle, so I'm going to rip this out of here, including the constructor. We'll change all these to Immobile Single Loop Particle. Okay, let's start with draw. Drawing looks fine, and updating looks fine. So let's fix our constructor now. So let's grab our parameters from inside of our H file. And instantiate everything correctly. Oh, we also need to take in units of game for X and Y so that we know where to place the particle effects. So units of game X, units of game Y, and add these to our CC. Okay, so now we need to initialize our sprite, and instead of doing all this KSprite name stuff and tile to pixel stuff, we're just going to call it with sprite name, which is now a parameter, source X and source Y, and source width and source height. And then FPS and FPS and num frames. And put a comma over here. And I think we should build. Just gonna build just to see if it builds. And then we can switch over to using ImmobileSingleLoopParticle.cc inside of our projectile star particle.h and cc. So I'm going to get rid of, I'm going to include, instead of animated sprite and particle.h, immobile single loop particle. And derive from that. So we can still take in the same arguments to projectile star particle, but we can get rid of our update and draw. And we can get rid of our private data. So it's just going to be a constructor now, and it's just going to be a specialized constructor, and it's kind of a nice way of doing things. We can get rid of these implementations for update and draw. Get rid of X and Y, and then just call our immobile single loop particles constructor, which is going to take in graphics and then all this stuff. So let's get rid of that graphics. And then in the end, we need to pass in X and Y. And that should do it. I'm going to build and run this, and we should essentially see the same effect because this has just been a light refactoring. Yeah, so we're still seeing everything's working out the same. So now we can go ahead and create our other particle effect, our projectile wall particle effect. And yeah, so let's do that. So let's create a new item. Projectile wall particle. .h and .cc. I'm actually going to rip everything from our projectile star particle because, hey, why not? Well, except for we got to change star to wall. And in here too. But everything else is the same. And in projectile wall particle, let's include, of course, projectile wall particle.h. And then implement our constructor. So I'll copy and paste everything, including our constants, because we just need to change those to be the wall constants, and it'll be easier if they're all just right there. So change star to wall, and then everything else looks good. So let's just change our constants now, and it's just going to be 11 in the x, 0 in y. Source width and source height there's 1 and 1, and then num frames is 4, but FPS is now 20. So now we can test this out. That's all we need to do. So let's open up our game CC class and test this. Oh, actually I'm going to open up a mobile single loop particle effect and change this to be, instead of num completed loops equals 0, let's do less than 10. But let's just comment this out because that's how I want it. I'm just going to do this just to see if the particle looks right while we create it. So let's go to game CC and include it, and include particle projectile wall particle.h, and then add it to our particle system. Add new particle boost shared pointer to a particle of a new what's it called? Particle tools? No. Projectile, sorry, projectile wall particle. Lost my head there. Graphics. And then 320 and 240. And just make sure this looks right. So I'll build and run, and we should just see it in the center of the screen. And that might conclude this episode. And in the next episode, we will actually place it. So let's see. Yep, it just does it 10 times. Let's see how this looks, just for curiosity's sake. Yeah, let's change that back to 1. Or, yeah, 1 iteration. And see how it looks. You won't be able to see the other particle now because it'll just disappear too quickly, but these will be back to normal, so we can just trust that the other one is working. And I'm happy. This is the end of this episode. Thanks for watching. In the next episode, we'll actually place it when it hits the walls. That's a little bit more complicated, so I decided to separate it into another episode. But thanks for watching, guys, and happy developing.